Hey,
What's up?
I think my voice is back, which might or might not be a good thing. I don't know. I know there were some people who said last week that what did they say?
Sucking a cough drop was
Was worse than experiencing carpet bombing.
yeah.
Which, I mean, I get. I mean, if your life is entirely online, it would be. And hey, I'm a podcast fan myself. I've been there, with the headphones on, and you hear someone like chewing their food when they're on a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
You want to kill. And ever since I started podcasting, I've been terrified of that, of making those gross mouth noises.
Mm-hmm.
So I instead opted for the gross throat noises last week. Anyway, I'm better. All's well. Who gives
of course,
a shit?
having sex with that commenter's mother.
I did. That's right. Yeah. She's a nice lady.
Mm-hmm.
But I did leave can you tell him I left my shoes there? I think under her bed, perhaps. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so
I have to get my watch too. So
yeah. Right. Well, we do a lot of things together. It's nice. We've had a close relationship for a while and share things. Anyway, so we're off to a good start here. That was just a delay tactic, right?
I will do anything to delay talking about Israel for a third week.
Fuck yeah. Let's pretend like it's like today's like 6 months ago. Let's just do that. Just pretend it didn't happen. It's all good. Or, I mean, we could just, you want to talk about, how about this? We talk about all the news that's not Israel.
Yeah. I wanted to talk the Fury and Ngannou fight. I think that's actually really important.
Haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
Wait, did I see what happened?
There was a knockdown. Ngannou knocked down Fury. He had a strong 8th round.
Split decision, right?
Split decision. Yeah.
I did see that. Yeah. Okay. I didn't see the fight, but I saw that decision. I saw the highlight of the knockdown. I didn't watch it because I don't watch heavyweight boxing. I try even heavyweight MMA. I avoid watching. One, their skill is not as good. Two, they're not as athletic. And if you're like into the technique of the sports, which I am, it's like the worst stuff to watch. And three, and this is maybe the biggest thing, it's like those guys do real permanent brain damage to each other. And it's not fun to watch that for me. This is one of the reasons I love watching women's fights. And people haven't quite understood that. It's true. They can't do nearly as much damage to each other. So I know that they're fine. And they can knock the shit out of each other and I don't have to worry about their health. As someone who participates in the sport, it's like a thing, you really don't want to see that for self-interested reasons, right? So anyway, yeah, I didn't watch it. Ngannou has been clocked by machines that measure these things as possessing the most powerful punch in the world of any professional fighter. I mean, all the fighters who have been measured. He's kind of fun. I mean, Fury, for that reason, he's not really a fighter though. He's a big dude who's a puncher, and they just pulled him off the street and trained him to do this sport to make a bunch of money. He's not temperamentally, he's not a fighter. You could sort of see that in a lot of ways that he's avoided taking certain fights, and like Fury was a fight for him to take because Fury has zero power. And doesn't hurt people at all, even though he is a heavyweight. He's one of the few heavyweights who I wouldn't be terribly afraid of. So, but I like Ngannou, and I think he does have a pacifist nature to him, actually. I don't think he's actually nearly as nasty as a lot of fighters are. That makes you sort of a boring fighter. He did that whole Derek Lewis fight where they didn't throw a punch for 5 rounds.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think he's really a fighter. I mean, which is a compliment to him as a person, but it means he's not going to be the best fighter ever. Fury is boring to me for different reasons. He's like actually too technical, and I'm very interested in technique always. That's what I usually care about the most. I usually favor the fighter who's just technically more proficient. Fury is all technique and a lot of fast twitch movements that are sort of cool to look at, but he operates in this box. All of his movements, all of his punches, everything he does is like in this little tiny box above like his chest, between his chest and his head. It's all in here. He has no foot movement, no head movement, no grace, no particular dexterity. He's a clod with some interesting punches that he like developed in the gym. and he's won, but it's mostly because the heavyweight division sucks shit since Tyson. There's been just no heavyweight since Mike Tyson who's even top 10, I think, pound for pound in the world, maybe even top 50. I mean, honestly, it's that bad. I mean, when the Klitschko's were like your best fighters for a decade, things are rough. And then Deontay Wilder can't even box. I mean, and I'm not kidding. He can't. If you really know anything about the sport and you watch that guy punch, he throws open-handed hooks. Like he hits with he paws people when he's throwing hooks, both left and right. He goes like this. And it's actually like a girl. He's that bad. And he's not actually athletic. He looks like an incredible athlete. If you're a racist and believe that like 6'7", totally chiseled black dudes from Alabama are going to be good athletes.
To this day, Thaddeus. To this day.
Huh?
To this day.
To this day, what?
That's Deontay's line.
Oh,
yeah.
I like him, and again, he's another one of these guys who's not really a fighter. I think his whole career, a lot of it's due to the fact that people assumed he would be a great athlete and therefore a great boxer because of the way he looks. He's not a good athlete. This is why dude's not in the NBA or in the NFL. If you had that body and you were a half decent athlete, you would definitely be a pro in one of those sports. Anyway, so Fury, Ngannou, I don't care.
Well, is this evidence that heavyweight boxing is a total lie? That
do you want to tell the people about your dad?
I mean, yeah, he was a boxer himself. He made it to the Olympic team, didn't go in 1980 when there was a terrorist attack. Yeah, but he was
good segue.
Yeah.
Good segue. So Michael and I are both have connections to this thing. But yeah, you want to get me really going. Oh, actually, here's another segue. There is, believe it or not. I never heard of this dude, I guess because he's I've heard he's a bum, according to some people. I think he's like very low level UFC fighter who's Israeli. There's a good Israeli fighter in the UFC. I forget his name. He's like top 10, I think, in one of the divisions. He's legit, but this other guy's like a total like can, as they call it. I guess he's in the IDF now. Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah. He's in the IDF now. Oh, you saw this, and he wrote the names of all of the UFC fighters, which apparently is like 6 or 7, who have expressed solidarity with Palestine. Period. Nobody has said they're pro-Hamas. No one's even suggested that. Or they've held a Palestine flag. So it's Khabib, and it's a bunch of like, what's his face? The other big shot from
Islam.
Yeah, Makachev. Well, no, Chimaev, that guy. Anyway, the guys from the Dagestan region. By the way, we got to talk about Dagestan if you want.
Do you think that's real? Do you think?
Hang on. So he put it. This dude, this Israeli. I get very. I've lost my decorum in recent days on Twitter, and you're like, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes it's time, and we got to talk about that. I think this is just one of those times. Okay. 2003 was another time. You could say 2001 was a time, just that everybody was too cowardly to say anything, but or stupid. But anyway, no, this guy, this Israeli UFC IDF fucking double fighter, I suppose. He posted a picture on Twitter of a I guess it was an artillery shell. It looked like yay big, like, something that could take out a whole building for sure. And he had written the names of all those fighters on the shell and then said something about this is for you or something. I mean, and you wonder why they can only get 14 countries, 2 of whom were Israel and the United States, and all the rest were just satellite nations of the United States, meaning the UK, and then a bunch of like Pacific islands and a couple of NATO countries. They can only get 14 countries to vote against a ceasefire. And 120 countries, including, these bizarre backwater American enemies like Norway and France, 120 countries voted for the ceasefire. This is the thing that's happening that's so wild, dude. Like, pro-Israel is a fringe position now globally. And even in the United States, it seems to me, certainly in terms of ceasefire, on the ceasefire question, like that is clearly a majority for ceasefire. And it's like Human Rights Watch, Dick Durbin, the senator, Amnesty International, the UN multiple times, UNICEF, but even sort of like major people who I normally despise on foreign policy, like major establishment blob. Oh my God. I was watching I never watched this show, but I had to the other day. Pod Save America. You know, the
Obama speechwriters.
The Obama guys. Yeah. First of all, as people, like those are the guys I would be most likely to hang out with. As people, they all are exactly like my friends. Like they're totally like my friends, especially people I went to grad school with in New York. I know those guys. Like it's exactly what I hang out with. They're also very, very sharp, unlike the Biden people. At least the Biden people who front Biden. I mean, a clown show, an amazing clown show. But no, the Obama dudes were smart because they all went to the best schools, and Obama had some decent taste. Anyway, it was Ben Rhodes who was Obama's. Was he NSA? He was what? It doesn't matter. He was Obama's main foreign policy guy, Ben Rhodes. And it's funny, like he has occasionally said stuff that I have been excited about, like in agreement. Now, dude ran U.S. foreign policy for 8 years. So, clearly most of what he did I despise, but like he sort of has the deepest understanding of anybody who's in the blob that I've seen. And he and this other dude, the guy who runs Pod Save America, Tommy Vitor, I think, they were both Obama dudes. They, of course, they gave the requisite, it was a terrible atrocity and Hamas terrorism. But they spent about like 30 seconds on that. I mean, if you were a pro-Israel person, you would be pissed off at these guys. They called the Netanyahu government a bunch of lunatics. They talked mostly about the suffering of the people in Gaza, the scale of the atrocities. They talked about Israel's tendency to historically and recently to do things like this, to respond totally disproportionately. And this is the worst case of that so far, which is saying something because, as I said before, it's usually like 10 to 1, 50 to 1, or 100 to 1 casualties. There have been some wars or battles between Gaza and Israel in which there were like fewer than 10 Israeli dead and like 1,000 or so Palestinians. I mean, is that anyway? So the establishment, much of the establishment is totally at least pro-ceasefire, and I'd say also harshly critical of Israel. Now, they're not anti-Zionist. That's the divider, right? There's those who have been harshly critical of Israel, but still support Israel's existence. And then the rest of us, who don't. And I noticed that Jewish Voice for Peace, which is the biggest pro-Palestine organization in this country, that's
who the ADL calls an anti-Zionist hate group.
Right. Well, do they call them anti-Semitic or anti-Zionist? That's
I believe they say anti-Zionist.
Okay, true. They are. No, I was going to say I looked at JVP's site today because they're doing a big protest here in San Francisco and in DC on Saturday, which are going to be huge. They were big last week, 20,000 here, and I think 50,000 in DC. I bet you it's going to double or triple because this week has changed. I mean, it was always big. I mean, but over the last week, you can see the establishment and then the protests in the streets in every single city in the world. Like, this is the biggest thing I've ever seen globally. I've never seen so many people protest on one side of an issue globally as this. Not even the Iraq War, maybe the Iraq War, but that would be it. That would be the only comparable moment. I mean, this is huge. Did you see that protest in London? I mean, they took over the fucking bridge and all of Westminster, like the whole government area in central London was taken over by protesters. Talking, I don't know what the number was, but it looked like it was 6 figures for sure. But every city, small cities in damn near every country that I've heard of. So this is new. There's also criticism, like not just on Pod Save America, but there's, and more importantly, there's actual outright, like JVP, outright and explicit anti-Zionism. See, that's a new thing. When I started getting interested in this topic and started teaching about the history of Israel and Palestine, that was the second Intifada in the early 2000s. And I remember back then when I had a lot of Jewish and a lot of Israeli and a lot of Zionist students, because I was at Columbia, right? It's been called Columbia University for a reason. I would get accosted after my lectures about this, and they would say to me, because I would use the word Zionism, I was like, yeah. And they would come in and say, oh, no one really uses that word, because it was sort of, it was considered like an epithet. I'm like, yo, is that not the founding ideology of your country? Is it? Didn't they call themselves Zionists? But now it's cool. You can now say, you not only can talk about Zionism, not just Israel. You used to have to couch it. You never could say Zion, because that sounded like it was racist somehow. And they're trying to revive that idea that being anti-Zionist is anti-Semitic, which is just, as we know from what I said last week, just the thing that actually maybe outrages me more than anything is the conflation of Jews with Israel. I mean, it's like all I do all day long is watch Norman Finkelstein, Max Blumenthal, Gabor Mate, Aaron Mate, this guy, Miko Peled, who's an Israeli Jew who is like the leading anti-Zionist in the world. That dude will like pour acid on the entire Israeli project in an hour speech. He's incredible. One after the Ilan Pape, who's an Israeli Jewish historian. There's one after the other, multiple historians who are Israeli Jews who have just denounced the entire project as being necessarily genocidal. It requires ethnic cleansing. And if the people who are targets of the ethnic cleansing resist at all, it requires them to be killed to have an exclusive Jewish ethno-state in the middle of the Middle East, period. So everything that's happened since 1948 is just an unfolding of that logic. So unfortunately what happens is we get into this thing where it's always this tit for tat. Who did it first? Who shot the missile first? Who did the atrocity first? Who committed a war crime first? It's like, no, it's the original crime is the occupation of Israel by settler colonialists from Europe, which is what they were. Here's the main statistic. And I may have said this last week, I remember, but like people got to remember this. This is what proves it pretty much to me, that this is a settler colonial country, Israel. In 1900 or 1890, in 1890, when the Zionist movement was founded, the Theodore Herzl Zionist organization, 1890s, it was founded. There were 20,000 Jews in Palestine. 50 years before then, there were 7,000 Jews in Palestine. 100 years before then, there were about 3,000 Jews in Palestine. But when the Zionist movement, when the call to establish the state of Israel in Palestine began, there were 20,000 Jews there. And there were 500,000 Arabs there, most of whom were Muslims, but a good chunk of whom were Christians. By the way, the Israelis hate the Arab Christians just as much, who are Palestinians, Palestinian Christians, I mean. So by the time Israel is founded, 40, 50, 60 years later, 1948, there's now like, what is it, 1 million Jews. And every one of them pretty much came from Europe. Some came from America, but most came from Europe. It's a European, the spokespeople, have you noticed, for the IDF are guys with British accents. One of them's from Scotland, looks like it. And the other one's from Australia and looks like it. Not Aborigine, like redheads. Yeah, Benjamin Netanyahu is from Brooklyn. This is a settler colonial project. I mean, it's obvious. Now, all you can do then is argue whether that was a necessary project. We had to do a Jewish nation here in this part of the world at that time in history. Okay, we can have that conversation. But to deny, which is what every pro-Israel person I've heard has said, to deny that it's a settler colonial project is just mind-boggling. It's like Jews have always lived there continuously. True. But like, so fucking what if it was like 5,000 of them and they constituted 2% of the people who lived there? It's bizarre. But mostly it's like, just from a pragmatic, self-interested perspective, and this is not like the moral, obviously this is sort of an amoral way to think about it. If you take the side of Israel in this conflict, certainly, as I said before, you're basically all alone on that island with Israel, the United States, and the UK. That's about it. And a bunch of Pacific islands. Most of the world not only is opposed to you, they think you're pretty barbaric by opposing a ceasefire, which, again, they can't leave. They can't leave. Half children, 2 million people. They have no Air Force. They have no Navy. They have no army. They have a bunch of dudes who are basically in like running shoes with homemade like rocket launchers. I've seen them. Do you see how they take out the tanks, the IDF tanks? These guys, they come out of the tunnels and they run. There's a video of it. And they run up to an IDF tank and they place a grenade on top of the tank turret and then run away, and it explodes and it takes out that, like, they're doing hand-to-hand combat with tanks. I mean, it's like wild. And that's, by the way, mostly what has gone on since October 7th, and including on October 7th. October 7th was overwhelmingly a military operation against military targets. There were civilians killed, for sure. For sure. Absolute war crime. Absolute war crime. Or multiple war crimes. The only question is how many war crimes were there and how many were committed by the IDF. So we now know that the IDF killed multiple people, killed multiple Israelis in crossfire, in bombing buildings they knew the terrorists were in.
Friendly fire.
And friendly fire. We know about that. Multiple instances. The burned baby, the one or two, I guess there's like 2 images of actual babies who are dead. Do we know for sure that Hamas burned the building? Because Hamas was busy running around shooting shit. I don't think they had a whole bunch of time to like set arson. I mean, it wasn't like, maybe they did, but I doubt it. They were always running. They were running and shooting, trying to do as much damage as possible. But we do know that Israel has the tanks and the shells and the things that explode and go boom and set things on big fire. So I can't imagine that many of those burnt bodies are IDF caused. Hamas leadership has multiple times I've seen say that the operation was absolutely planned to target only military installations and personnel. Now, I don't know. They could be bullshitting. Totally possible. I'm not denying, absolutely possible for Hamas. But I don't see why they would target civilians. It clearly didn't do them any good. I mean, that is the only chip that Israel and its friends have. It's amazing. Still to this day, they begin every sentence on this question with beheaded babies and raped women. The 2 things that didn't happen. But there are clear atrocities. There's videos of them shoot. There's bodies of old women on the street, bleeding out from the head, at a bus stop, at a kibbutz. Okay? Like multiple of them. I've seen at least 2 or 3 with gray hair, not IDF soldiers, war crimes. Why is that not enough? I didn't know about those fucking grandmothers until today. Why haven't they? But they keep telling me about beheaded babies that don't exist. I mean, do you know what that is?
I don't want to say it publicly.
I really don't know. Like, what do you think?
Did you see what the idea? What the problem isn't everything you just said. The problem is the entire world, except for the United States and Great Britain and some Pacific Islands sometimes, is anti-Semitic. That's the real problem. Did you see what the Israeli ambassador to the UN did? The stunt he pulled?
Which one? Which stunt?
I'm gonna play it.
From now on, my team and I will wear yellow stars. We will wear this star until you condemn the atrocities of Hamas and demand the immediate release of our hostages.
Sorry, we're about to experience something worse than carpet bombing. It just hit me again. I don't know what happened. Anyway, I did not know about that.
Yeah.
Norman Finkelstein, The Holocaust Industry. There it is, right there. That book and Norm's career, much of it, was devoted to showing how people in Israel and in the Israel lobby in the United States have used the legacy of the Holocaust or invented a legacy of the Holocaust to do one thing and one thing only, which has been to advance the interests of the state of Israel against the Palestinians. It has been used since 1946 to justify atrocities, land grabs, forced dislocations, dispossessions, the bulldozing of homes, settler violence, burning of olive groves, which they're doing today. I saw that, I think, in Hebron. Justified all those things with the Holocaust. That's it. It's been their card. They always play. Well, we get to do this because guess what happened to us? If you don't let us do this to the Palestinians, Hitler's going to come get us again. I mean, so guess what I found out? Another number I found out in the last week since we last spoke about this. So infamously during the Holocaust, and I mean, even before the Holocaust, I mean, the entire history of the Third Reich, the United States did not allow basically any Jews to enter the United States from Germany or the Third Reich. No Jewish refugees were allowed. State Department and Franklin Roosevelt were flagrantly anti-Semitic, could give a fuck. That changed after the camps were discovered and the GIs suddenly became big heroes for liberating these Jews that FDR was denying existed. So suddenly there was a huge demand, and the Truman administration had to cave into this demand to allow, of course, Jews from the Third Reich to come into the United States, refugees. And so between just 1945 and 1948, when Israel was established, more than 100,000 Jewish refugees from Europe entered the United States and became citizens. And I have known personally about a half a dozen of those people. And I bet a lot of people have seen some of these people in their schools, right? Because they used to trot around Holocaust survivors and just to schools to give talks and show their tattoos. Legit, but about 100,000. That's a lot. There weren't that many more left, in Europe. And, these are people who were in the camps. Many of them, not all of them, but many of them were in the camps. And guess what happened to, all of them? They all died of natural causes. They all died of natural causes. Not one Palestinian or Arab or Muslim laid a hand on them, ever. Because no Palestinian gave a shit about them, because they weren't occupying their goddamn land. So I'm really glad my grandfather, Noah Koenigsberg, who was the generation before that, in the 1890s, he and his family in Odessa, Ukraine, the most anti-Semitic place on earth, left, and they didn't go to fucking Zion, which they could have, because the Zionist movement had just started, and joined the 20,000 Jews who lived there. No, they moved to Chicago. And hence I exist. And no Palestinian ever did a damn thing to any of us. Most importantly, no Palestinian's ever been mad at us. No Palestinian's ever been mad at anybody in my family at all. And that goes for every American Jew I've ever known. None of us have had to serve in the military. Everybody who chose to go to Israel has to serve in the military. You're surrounded by people who hate you, who lob rockets into your country on a regular basis from the South and the North. There has not been a 5-year period in the entire history of Israel since 1978 in which there have not been multiple attacks on civilians and others inside Israel by people who hate them because they took their land. It just goes on and on. I don't know. The deeper you go on this issue, and especially the more they're killing children, the harder it's been for me, at least, and I think for a lot of people, to as I said, maintain my decorum. And I don't have patience.
They want
Yeah.
you to lose your decorum, so it justifies what they're about to do.
About to do?
Yeah.
It's up to 10,000.
Yeah.
And half are kids? 5,000 children in 3 weeks, guys? I mean, really? Like, what? I mean, even like, as I said, like totally establishment foreign policy blob people are saying we need a ceasefire now. Dick Durbin in the Senate, thank fucking God, he's the first first senator, I should say. The squad has been, of course, great on this. The only thing they're good on. The first senator finally to call for a ceasefire. Just grotesque. By the way, Rand Paul, fuck you. Like, what? Yeah, Bernie Sanders, fuck you. No, total failures. Massive stain on both of them. I just don't get it. Like, if you care at all about these things, I mean, you simply can't allow Israel to do this. You could maybe fashion an argument that, you know, they should have been allowed to bomb for X number of hours to take the, you know, proper amount of, you know, proportional casual. I'm not arguing this, but at least there is an argument there. At least there's some logic to that. This is insane. And the question is, this is the question, and I haven't heard any of these people answer. Ben Shapiro, sorry, I love you, Batya, Ungar Sargon. Several people I love a lot have just refused to answer this question. So, like, when would you want a ceasefire? At what point will it be too much? Too many dead? What's the number? We're at 10,000 now, maybe about 5,000 kids. And that's not the wounded, that's the dead. That's not the people who are unhoused now, which I don't even know that number. Got to be in the tens of thousands who are homeless. And these refugee camps in Gaza, apparently, are the worst places on earth to live for a bunch of, I mean, is it 20,000? Will you call for a ceasefire when they've killed 20,000 civilians in Gaza? Or is it 50,000? Because I know this is the worst attack in the history of Israel. It's the biggest pogrom against Jews since the Holocaust. I know. That sounds really big. It sounds like you guys want to kill a whole lot. So I want to know the number so I can prepare, because I know you're going to get to do that. They'll be allowed to do that. They'll be encouraged, perhaps, maybe. Well, I don't know. The U.S. might get cold feet. The U.S. in the past, it's true, has actually had to moderate and slow down and constrain Israel. That's a very common thing. Henry Kissinger. How many people did Henry Kissinger kill? Somewhere well over 1 million. and had his hand in perhaps millions more deaths globally. I mean, everybody knows. Christopher Hitchens wrote an entire book about how Henry Kissinger is, according to him, the greatest mass murderer of modern history. I don't think he was, but he's certainly one of them. Henry Kissinger, cold gangster. His whole thing, and I've talked about this speech many times, the Kletznik Group speech in 1975 to these Jewish bankers and big shot, like the Israel lobby. He says to them, son of the Holocaust. I mean, refugee from the Holocaust. He says, yo, we run things. You don't get all uppity now that you won these 2 wars, 67 war and the 1973 war, because there was all this, Israeli was getting very big chested after the 73 war that they won. And they started talking about how they run the region and this and that, and how the United States needs to follow their lead. And they're making all these demands of the United States. Kissinger sits them all down and says, yo, nuh-uh. We run things. And number 2, Jews have had this historical tendency to make people hate their guts and want to kill them. And that's what Israel is doing now. So you need to calm down. What they were demanding from him in 1973, at one point, an entire Egyptian, I think, some major unit in the Egyptian army, I think it may have been a brigade or a battalion or something, like we're talking, I think, thousands of men, were encircled by the IDF, and they were deciding what to do with these guys. And what happened was the IDF went to Kissinger and said, we want to massacre them, to send a message to the Arab states that they can't fuck with Israel. And so Kissinger had to sit them down and say, if you do that, number 1, you'll cease to exist because everyone in the world will want to fucking kill you. Number 2, the Soviet Union will swoop right in and scoop up all those Arab states real fast and help them demolish you. Because they'll hate the United States and they'll hate Israel more than anything. And they're just going to want to go find big weapons, and they're going to get those from the commies. And then the commies and the crazy anti-Israel Arabs will kill all of you in Israel and take over the entire Middle East and all the oil on it. So we're going to say, slow down, bro. And this has been the entire history. If you look at almost the Bush too, the W. Bush administration, they multiple times chastised publicly, issued public condemnations of Israeli policy, in particular, the expansion of the settlements throughout the West Bank and Gaza, which everybody should go look at a map. There's some great interactive maps about how the settlements, every single one of which is illegal and always has been. There's no disputing that, because they're on occupied territory, occupied by Israel after 1967. The Israeli government almost always would send the IDF in to help these settlers build shit, displace the Palestinians, bulldoze houses owned by Palestinians for generations, and defend Israel. These insane, like these hill kid settlers who go around, they're just gangsters. They go around terrorizing Palestinians. They kill Palestinian children often. They've burned families and houses and stuff. The IDF will protect them often, not always, but often. The Bush administration multiple times said, yo, you can't do that. That's illegal. Very bad. I mean, this is after W kills 1 million Iraqi kids. Like what? Kills 500,000 or whatever, hundreds of thousands of Iraqis, right? So they're like, get nervous. And you know what, like Jimmy Carter and Clinton, I mean, they all were consistently always supporting the Zionist project, always supporting the state of Israel, of course, but have had to constantly restrain Israel from what looks like often genocidal intentions. So it's a lot of this shit is not new. In fact, none of it's new. It's just more pronounced. And then we also have more video of what they actually do now. And so this is why I think things have changed. The terrain has changed. People have seen not just all those incredible videos. I mean, this video, I couldn't even get through it. I think it's 4.5 minutes long. This video that I posted today of they bombed a school, a UN school I think it's inside the Jabalia refugee camp, I believe. This video is like 4.5 minutes. I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, I see like 2 or 3 bodies, and I'm like, all right, I actually don't see like necessarily evidence that these people are really dead. And then it keeps going. This person just walking, and it's just one after the other, blood gushing, blood everywhere, body mangled, body. You can't. I've never seen video of anything this bad. I know Hiroshima and Nagasaki were worse, but I haven't seen video of that. I've never seen video this bad. I've heard multiple journalists who have covered this very issue for decades say the same thing. foreign policy reporters, people who go to war zones have said they've never seen themselves through video anything this bad. I can't watch the videos. I've watched maybe a dozen, and I can't. That's about it. I can't do it. I couldn't even get through that one. I don't even know what happens in the last 2 minutes of that one. How many bodies there are, and how many children. And now it's many, many reports over the last 2 weeks, or at least a week, of hospitals performing surgeries without anesthetic on children. Amputations without anesthetic, and you don't want a ceasefire. What? I don't really like it. Gets they wonder why anti-Semitism is on the rise. I'm a quarter Jewish. My son's Jewish. My mother's Jewish. I was married to a Jew. I was married to a Jew before that. I've been a member of Jewish families as an in-law for 20 years. Fuck everybody. I just start to think things like this is confirming the stereotype of the Jew as this rootless, amoral, cynical hustler who will lie to achieve any end which benefits them materially, like in terms, economically, like with land, for instance. It's like, and the way the IDF spokespeople have spoken when I watch these dudes give their presentations about the Hamas headquarters underneath the hospital with all the mock-up of all the rooms underneath, as if they have this video footage of what the Hamas furniture looks like. They're so clearly lying. Like, it's way worse than the Pentagon. The Pentagon is pretty slick about it. I know they're lying, but they're not dumb about it. These guys are like, and they just look like fucking Shylock. I'm sorry. They act like Shylock. They're just like, you guys are the original stereotypes. Now you have an army. There are Jews who act like the stereotype. Unfortunately, they tend to run the fourth biggest army in the world. And a very important state. I know a lot of Jews who are the opposite of that, but like there have been some. It is a cultural trait among some Jews. Ask a Jew, they'll tell you. They're the first people to tell you that, oh yeah, hell yeah, that's why we're so good at banking. There is a huge tendency that's like that. It's very amoral. And on the other side, which is very interesting, there's a lot of Jews who have been, I think, basically Christians. The Reform Jews, the secular Jews who are political, the left-wing Jews of the last 200 years or so, which is a lot of them, they act like Christians. Their morality is Christian. It's a secular Christianity. It just doesn't have that God in it, but it's the same feeling. It's this complete like universalism. All people are one, and my Palestinians are my brother. And there's a huge Jewish Israeli peace movement in Israel until 20 years ago.
Which is to say they're liberals.
And that's who they, right. And that was a big deal in Israeli politics. And the Labor Party was, controlled national politics, and their official position was a two-state solution. And they issued many, many statements. They killed a lot of Palestinians, of course, but they always issued lots of statements about how terrible it was to kill Palestinians, and they had civil rights too, and human rights, and da-da-da-da. Like the Netanyahu government, the whole Likud conservative movement since then, since the second Intifada of the 2000s, has not done that. They've been like, fuck the Tuesday solution. Nope, Palestinians are terrorists. Fuck them. And the peace movement has dissolved. But I wanted to say one thing publicly, and here is where the people on my side in this issue, I think, I'm not going to say they're disingenuous. I'm going to say that they avoid this, and I think it's time to start embracing this because it's just seems obviously true to me. When I started lecturing about this issue in the early 2000s, as I said, it was during the second Intifada. And this is when they were blowing up, they were doing suicide bombings on buses in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Killed hundreds of Palestinian civilians, people just on buses going to work. Like this is arguably even worse. I think it was worse than October 7th. And it went on for years. And I had friends who lived in Tel Aviv and who had children in Tel Aviv. And so I got to hear what it was like and just to live with that. But what happened during that time was you could see the ascendancy of this conservative Likud movement, which was hostile to the two-state solution and was committed to an aggressive settler policy, putting what they called facts on the ground. If we move our people into the occupied territories, they'll never be able to get it back. An incredible strategy that they've been able to get away with since 1967. And everyone should go look at a map of all of the illegal settlements in the West Bank and formerly Gaza. They were forced to kick them out of Gaza eventually, but my God, it's astounding how many there are in the West Bank. At that time, what happened in Israel among the population was a change. The old left wing that used to be very warm-hearted about Palestinians and believed that Palestinians wanted a two-state solution started to change their minds and started to think, wait, these people blowing up our people on buses in Tel Aviv, what? They are not friendly. They're not going to be cool with it, being, even if we gave them a state next door to us. Why would we want people like that to have a state where they could have their own army, right? Not just Qassam with their fucking homemade rockets, whatever. They don't do anything. No, but like they could have an army if they have a state. So no, we don't want a state for the Palestinians. No, there's going to be one state. Sorry, it's going to be Israel. But the thing was, you could see that. And nowadays, polls taken in Israel, like half the country is officially racist. I mean, they'll say straight up, no, I think Palestinians or Arabs are genetically inferior. I don't want to live anywhere near them. I would never want my children to marry any of them. They're officially right. I mean, they're like publicly racist. It's totally half the public is. And then the two-state solution, I think it's less than 10% of Israelis. I don't even know what the number is there, but it's just Likud has dominated. The Netanyahu government in various forms has dominated since the late 90s. And now it's even more right-wing than ever. They have two guys to the Minister of Security, of all things, and the Minister of Finance are both from the settlement. These are like far right-wing, totally racist, genocidal in their own rhetoric, settlers from the settler communities, Ben Gvir and Smotrich. People should look up these dudes. They are at the top of the Netanyahu government. They are annihilationists openly. They want to get rid of the Palestinians. They want ethnic cleansing straight up or genocide. They'll take your pick. If they're not able to push the Palestinians out of Gaza, well, we're going to continue what we're doing. That's who the government is. But anyway, so that now people on my side, I think, even people who call themselves anti-Zionists, I don't even think they do call themselves anti-Zionists, but they will not admit this. They will not admit that it sure looks to me that the analysis of the right wing in Israel, the analysis of Netanyahu and the Likudniks and these whack job settlers is correct. That overwhelmingly Palestinians, they would not allow the state of Israel to exist, even if you gave them their own state. That a two-state solution will not survive because the Palestinians won't ultimately accept it, even. That they will want their own annihilation of Israel. I think that's probably true. Now, of course, the terms of the deal that would be cut for a two-state solution, that might do it. I mean, if you gave the Palestinians a lot, if you gave them, like all the good beachfront property, they got some of it in Gaza, but if they got whatever, and the good agricultural land instead of like the Sinai, which is where they're trying to push them now. That's the official plan, by the way. They're asking Egypt to open up the gate, the southern gate, so that everybody can be pushed, 2 million people, into the Sinai Peninsula, which is a desert. It's the Negev Desert. I think it's uninhabitable, basically, the interior of it. That's now what they're saying they're going to do or try to do. So it's the question is, one question is, why did the Palestinians, why would they not accept a two-state solution? Why do they want to see the end of Israel no matter what? That's what Hamas's official position is, by the way. I just saw the head of Hamas just say this today. He said, nope, no matter what, Israel has to go. He said the whole rationale for the existence of the state of Israel makes no sense, and it is inherently genocidal. And he's right about that basic analysis. But the point is that if you have that basic analysis, then Israel has to go, and you would never accept it, even if you were given your own state. So now, how much of the Palestinian people does that represent? I think it just represents a whole lot. Now the question is why. And, people on my side will give you like 9 trillion reasons why Palestinians would want to get rid of the state of Israel. The main one being the displacement and the permanent displacement of them, and the settler colonialism of it all, which was it was recent too. This was not, we're not talking about colonies from hundreds of years ago, even. You're not talking about like the United States. We're talking about, 1948, the damn thing was established, I was born in its infancy, it was ridiculous. So I'm pretty sure Palestinians would not accept the two-state solution. So then the question is, I have heard and by the way, Mark Lamont Hill is, I've actually gained some new respect for a lot of people on this. He's one of them.
The liberals are pretty smart this time around. Like
liberals are great, man. This is the first time I felt good about liberals in forever, maybe ever, my whole life. I've never felt good about liberals until now. There've been a lot of good liberals. Well, he's more than a liberal. He's definitely a lefty with a big, like, black radical piece to him, a lot of which I like, actually. But he's been pretty great on this, and he's also one of the best explainers. I strongly recommend watching a Mark Lamont Hill video about Israel-Palestine that gives you like basic preces about it. He did say that he no longer favors a two-state solution. And this, I think, is where the left is going. I think this is where they're kind of ending up, which is a one-state solution, which is a democratic state, which is everybody gets one vote. All the people who originally, the refugees and the descendants of everyone who lived in Palestine in 1948, meaning everybody in Gaza, everybody in the West Bank, everybody in Israel, all the Jews and all the Palestinians would get a one vote. And that's that. Now, you know what that means? No state of Israel ceases to exist because there would be a Palestinian majority. And so therefore it would just no longer be a Jewish state. So, the Zionists will not allow that. So there we are. That's a nice sounding. I'm not like a big fan of democracy or liberal democracy or yada, yada, but like as solutions go, yeah, I'd be down with that. Now the question is, how are you going to get all the people who live in that whole area in Israel and Palestine to accept a one-state solution? How are you going to get the Israelis to accept it? Palestinians would probably would accept it because they would get to take over, at least as the demographic majority. I'm not saying they all agree on everything, but as a demographic majority, they'd have the majority, and then there would no longer be the state of Israel, no longer be a Jewish state. So that is, I think, a humane anti-Zionism. My position would be, I guess, if I were this, that my solution is a one-state solution. And why can't we just have a democracy? All the people who live there and their descendants who are refugees, which according to everybody they're legitimate as having claims to that land. Why not just give all those people one vote and then you show what the whole thing is? It's a fucking ethno-state, and it's racist. It's Israelis have not acted in racist ways against the Palestinians. In fact, I'd say more often than not, they don't. They don't act in racist ways. I'm saying the whole state of Israel must be, always has been racist. You can't become a citizen unless you are Jewish. And if you are Jewish, you can become a citizen. That's that. And if you're Jewish, You get to have land in all these places that Palestinians used to own. You can even take some of their houses. Sarah Silverman's sister is like this liberal, lefty, peace-loving, peacenik-y rabbi who lives in Jerusalem. And according to Max Blumenthal, she lives in or on top of a demolished Palestinian house. Like that was just seized by settlers in East Jerusalem. 20,000 Jews were living there when this thing started, and 500,000 Arabs. Do you need to know anything more? Like, the other thing you should know, and this goes to your Nietzsche argument, which I've been thinking about constantly, which I like. Like, if you're going to defend Israel, that's the only argument I will listen to at this point. To the victors should go the spoils because they were the best. And now that's a strong argument. I like it. On a meta level, Israel has won the war. No one doubts that. At multiple wars since 1947, they've won the war over and over again. And so they're therefore the stronger party and therefore the better party. And therefore we should accept or celebrate them. Right now, if they were, Sparta, all by their little selves, fending off enemy after enemy and being valiant, muscular warriors that, people like Bronze Age Pervert love so much. Yeah, I could get behind that. I could get behind that pretty strongly, actually. Here's the difference. And boy, is it a big difference. The state of Israel would not exist without the United Kingdom, which gave them the land by fiat during World War I and during the British Mandate and during the partition. But with the Balfour Declaration, they just said, okay, this is our land now, but it's going to be a Jewish homeland. Sorry, Arabs. And they said straight up, it's because so we'll have a base of operations in the Middle East. They said that, the UK government at the time, 1917, Balfour Declaration. Then, after the State of Israel was established in 1948, the state of France, provided all their military equipment. They provided all the Mirage jets and the tanks that were used in 1967 to seize all that occupied territory, including Gaza. Gaza was seized because France had given all this military equipment to Israel to use in that war, or use in any war. Then after that war, France stopped doing that, and the United States took over. And in the beginning of 1968, the United States started just pumping money and military equipment into Israel. Huge amounts, way more than France was giving them. And that amount just kept doubling and doubling over the ensuing decades. And so we've given them more than, I think it's now $150 billion since 1948 total in economic and military aid. But currently it's close to $4 billion per year. And the only position, if you care at all, if you're at all sympathetic to the Palestinian side, the only position you need to take, you don't need to answer anything else. The only position you need to take is, if you're an American, is I oppose the United States supporting Israel. That's it. You don't have to be anti-Israel. You don't have to be anti-Zionist. You can say, this is what I say. If Israel wants to go do its thing over there, have its little Jewish state among all the Arabs and keep them permanently displaced, great. Honestly, like I swear, I'm totally cool. Like, go do that. I'm not going to support it. And I don't want you to use my money. And I certainly don't want you to use my money if my money has been given to Raytheon to make Apache, whoever makes Apache combat helicopters, to strafe kids in the West Bank. I mean, so that's all you got to do. I don't want a part of it. And if anybody comes begging for help for the Palestinian cause and asks you for money, you can say, I don't want to help them either. Because, yeah, there is some possibility that the money will end up in Hamas's hands. Sure. Whatever. But even if not, like, yeah, no, that is the only position I am encouraging people to take. That's it. You don't have to answer for anything. You don't have to have an argument about the history of Israel or Zionism or yada, yada, whether it's genocide, whether it's an apartheid state. No. Just look at what's happening and ask yourself, do you want your money going to that? Because every single munition that's dropped on those kids was manufactured somehow in the United States. I mean, it's like It's simple. 5,000 kids, really? I mean, am I just being like a bleeding heart pussy? Like, this seems just sort of like, no, we don't do that, right? What? Why? Think of any other country doing that. Like, think of any Western country doing that. Think of like if France had like enclosed some population of 2 million people somewhere and was just and bombing it because there were terrorist actions against the people who were in the enclosed camp from the I mean, like, we would be like, no, you can't. And there were 5,000 people and they were white. And by the way, you know, I have been the first person to talk about how racism accusations are about 99% bullshit or worse. But I watch these people talk, and I'm talking about the pro-Israel people, the people who are anti-ceasefire. Let's talk about those. That's who I'm talking about. You can be pro-Israel and still have a reasonable position, I think. I'm talking about people who are opposed to a ceasefire now. This is the one political position that has been taken since I've been politically conscious that I can't accept. I mean, I can't respect really anyone who opposes a ceasefire in Gaza now. It's astounding to me. 10,000 is not enough. And by the way, how many Hamas fighters have you taken out? How many Hamas fighters are in the 10,000? I bet damn none of them, because they're all underground. We know this. They're underground. So what is this really about? What's this really about? They know they can't kill the Hamas fighters this way from bombardment. So why do they do it? Unreal. Those tunnels they've been digging those tunnels since 2006, maybe before, but at least since 2006, they've been digging them in earnest. They have had a tunnel that goes to Egypt. By the way, I would love to know where that tunnel exit is. There's probably multiple ones. And that's, by the way, how they get most of their supplies in, is through these tunnels to Egypt. Egypt doesn't know about it. Egypt doesn't want to know about it. But that's it. That's all you got. The only position you got to take, and you don't need to know a goddamn thing, except that you don't like what's happening. You don't have to engage in debates about Zionism or any of that. Just say, no, I don't want my money going there. It's a very, very principled, good old American traditional position to take. Very good old-fashioned American. And it's not isolationism, it's anti-interventionism. It is super American. And it comes from the heartland. It comes from the Midwest and the South. That's where you had all the so-called isolationists from Congress who opposed all the wars because they're not our wars and because they didn't want an American empire. They just wanted America to be its beautiful self all by itself, which is a very beautiful image, actually. It's the image of Ron Paul. He often talks about it. He says, all we need is a submarine on each coast, a nuclear submarine on each coast. We'll be fine. And America can just do its own business as it does, which it does beautifully when it doesn't have an empire that costs tens of trillions of dollars. The U.S. debt, by the way, I think most of it is made, almost all of it's because of the empire. It's almost all military shit. It's the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq and everywhere, and just the massive military budget that keeps going up and up and up. All right.
I would like to publicly say that all stereotypes are negative and harmful and not based on anything in reality at all.
Except for some. No, I think they're almost not all, but I'd say a lot of them, most of the ones I've seen,
they're the opposite of the truth. They were just made up and thought up for hate. That's the only reason why they exist, is because people hate.
Randomly, yeah. No Jew has ever had a crooked nose. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? I actually have my mother's Jewish bump. Of course, like what? Like my the first Jewish family I was an in-law in, which was for 5 years, big Jewish, very Jewish family in Michigan, Detroit, outside of Detroit. Like there was like, I think there were 4 women in it in the family, and every single one of them got a nose job. And the thing is, they talked about it. Like, this is openly, again, if you hang out with Jews, like, they'll tell you everything. Like, they don't care. They're like, oh yeah, hell yeah, we're good with money, and they're proud of it. And it's really funny. Yeah. And I just think it's amusing for the most part. And there's a little amorality in there too, because again, historically stateless, that's what I love about Jews. And this is another reason I am insulted by Israel and offended by it, because the statelessness of Jews is what's made them great. It's what's made them independent thinkers. They have usually not identified with any particular nation state. And so they've been able to become very good observers and critics, because they had to understand these countries that they lived in as strangers, where they were hated, where they were trying to start businesses. They had to understand the local goyim so they could, get over, which made them very smart. Again, if you want an explanation for Jewish intellectualism, why Jews are so intellectual historically, which they sure as hell have been, that's a big reason by necessity. All the best American historians I know are Jewish. Like, they see things differently because of the outsider status. They're sort of inside and outside simultaneously. But, giving them a state to latch onto, to identify with, to hunker down in, like, it actually causes them to be. And this is why I look at these Israeli spokespeople. I'm like, you are a disgrace to the people, because they're so anti-intellectual and incurious and just hucksters, shysters, propagandists. I mean, the worst of the tradition. They're not the great intellectuals. The greatest intellectuals are all Jewish, in my book. I mean, pretty much. I mean, at least modern intellectuals, I would say, for sure. So, or at least they dominate, I would say. Like, at least, yeah, a majority of the greatest intellectuals of the modern era are absolutely Jewish. No doubt about it. I mean, it doesn't even matter what your politics are. It doesn't matter if you agree with them or not. But in terms of being influential and important, there's no doubt. So, being stateless is a good thing. It's a very good thing. It's a good thing for one's intellectual acuity. I think it forces you to be sharp. It forces you to always be studying your surroundings. If you're always the outsider, and especially the pariah outsider, right? You got to really know the country you're living in, so you can assimilate, so you can like act in ways that that will appeal to them and keep you out of harm's way. And Israel, the whole project of Israel was to just reverse all of that and sort of like remake Jews, right? And make them into tough. Now they're tough too. They're big and tough and strong. And they're not thinkers anymore. They're soldiers. Everybody in Israel is a soldier. That's disgusting. Jews are like, historically, they've been the thinkers. They've been the little nerdy intellectual in the corner who like reads the book and tells us what the fuck's going on, while the rest of us are playing sports and signing up for the military, right? They're the outsider historically, doing that very thing. And that's what's great about them. That's the greatest thing, in my view, about Jewish people historically. Absolutely. And that comes from their statelessness. Then again, if you really need a state and a government and an army to protect you, move to LA, move to Flatbush, move to Westchester County, move to Long Island, move anywhere in the United States, Western Europe for that matter. But hey, we've been protecting Jews beautifully for 100 years now. Beautifully. We don't let shit happen to our Jews here. Goodness. It's pornographic.
Yeah.
It's all pornographic. But it's like real porno. I mean, the videos coming out of Gaza are, I can understand why some people don't trust them and think it's some of it's crisis acting. Because my thought was, when I saw that school bombing, I was like, wait, that can't be. But then you just see like crushed skulls and, a kid with bloody stumps for legs and his face blown off. That was one. Yeah, I don't think they were faking. Plus, we just know. You can just see with the overhead footage of the buildings that have been demolished is like, that's got to kill people. I mean, in an urban area, it's got to kill lots of people. So that's why the casualty figures coming out of the Gaza Ministry of Health also have to be close. They can't be far off. I'm sure they inflate them a bit, But I mean, it's got to be in the thousands. You can't just do that. You can't bomb a densely packed city for 3 weeks and not kill thousands of people. I mean, by the way, Norman Finkelstein has done a very, very intensive. This guy is like, he spent 40 years, he said. Yeah, 40 years he has spent on this very issue, studying everything. He's written 12 books on it. But he has studied the source of every casualty figure in Gaza since 2006. Right. There have been multiple reports about the number of people who have been killed in Gaza. Right. And this is very controversial. How true is it? Because the Gaza Ministry of Health is most likely controlled to some extent by Hamas. Like, no one denied. That's be unlikely if they weren't to some extent. But there have been all these other humanitarian organizations, because you've got humanitarian organizations on the ground in Gaza all the time. The UN's always there. They have a permanent presence in Gaza. They give their own counts, and have since 2006, since the bombing campaigns began. This is the 6th one, by the way. 6 of these things have happened where Israel has bombed Gaza. And Finkelstein says that the Gaza Ministry of Health numbers are slightly above the average of all the humanitarian organizations. That they're basically correct. That so it's if it's not exactly 10,000, it's somewhere close to that. But you can see the destruction for yourself. I mean, they destroy whole blocks, with people living in them. So it has to be happening. It's a kind of a weird argument almost. Like, we still haven't seen like clear evidence of a lot of the shit they've claimed about Israel, about the Israeli casualties on October 7th. But boy, we've seen, come on. I mean, how much evidence do you want? I mean, it's clearly a mass slaughter going on in Gaza. Sorry, we talked about this too much. I know. We're not showing videos.
I know. I've got I have the Wolf Blitzer clip where he's talking about the refugee camp.
That was amazing. Another example of Israel just really losing for the first time.
Yeah.
Man.
And I think about Wolf Blitzer, who a guest on CNN told me, and I didn't believe him, he's a member of AIPAC. I mean, he was a lobbyist for AIPAC. That's how he started his career.
Yep, correct. Wolf is from, he's from, what's his connection to Israel specific? I mean, I think, did he live there, or his parents lived there or something like that? But he's a AIPAC good dude. So yeah, and he's like talking to this IDF commander who's trying to justify, who is from Scotland. Oh no, they're not settler colonialists. Oh no. Some redheaded Jewish guy just happens to show up in Israel, in Palestine. Yeah. God, the other guy's like total redhead from Australia, the other IDF spokesman. Anyway, yeah, the IDF guys, well, no, they were trying to, Hamas commander, trying to get him. Yeah, well, we got it. Well, I'm not going to say whether we got him. Yes, I mean, it's unfortunate civilian casualties happen. And Wolf Blitzer's is like, you knew that there were civilians, hundreds of civilians living in this place, and you still bombed it to get one guy? Like, and the guy was just like, oh, well, so much more. Wolf Blitzer's outraged at Israel. You got problems, fellas. And this is the big point that I was sort of getting to earlier about Israel's increasing isolation. Only 14 countries. And again, half of them were like Tuvalu and Fiji. Like, no one cares about. The others are all NATO. They're just US. And by the way, half of the NATO countries voted for a ceasefire, or they abstained. The increasing isolation of Israel. You've got like big parts of the establishment in every country calling for a ceasefire, not liking what Israel's doing. You have anti-Zionism having a real voice. As I said, it was weird to say the word Zionism or anti-Zionism in the 2000s. Not now. Not now. Jewish Voice for Peace on their website says we are an anti-Zionist organization, meaning we are opposed to the existence of the state of Israel. These are Jews, founded right here in Berkeley, by the way. These left-wing Jews, a lot of left-wing Jews here in the Bay Area. Israel is more isolated than ever. It is clinging to its life raft of the United States. And if the United States drops them, they're done. The thing is, the whole rest of the fucking world is looking kind of anti-Zionist these days. I gotta say, not just critical of Israel, but probably getting tired of this whole thing, because every 2 or 3 years, they kill a whole bunch of Palestinian kids. Just a lot. And it's just so much over 75 years. I just see this. And because of the videos, because of the internet, God bless, because of the social media, people finally know what's going on. They see. And it's just the worst. It's the worst thing anyone's seen on video. So Israel, if I lived there, and I've thought about my friend Michael Zakim, who lives there, professor at Tel Aviv University, and his kids who live there, who I'm sure have already done their IDF service. Like, I don't know. I mean, I would start to at least think about maybe living elsewhere, because it's not going to change. It's just not going to change. So long as that thing exists, and now that they've got these settlements everywhere, you're guaranteed to have perpetual war with those people, because those settlements are literally on top of those people's former homes. I mean, I'm talking about from like just now, there's settlements just bulldozed a bunch of homes like last week in Hebron or somewhere in the West Bank, bulldozed a bunch of Palestinian homes, and they're going to build settlements right on top of them. Like, and that's all over the West Bank and Gaza, illegally occupied Palestinian territory. You can't defend the settlements. By the way, if you want to go after the Zionist cause with a surgical strike, the thing they're going to have the hardest time answering to is the settlements. And by the way, talking about like living up to the Jewish stereotype, goodness, I mean, so nasty, sneaky. Mark Lamont Hill or somebody said it's like you're like dividing up a pizza between the two of you, but the guy, you're trying to do it evenly, but the guy you're dividing up with starts eating the pizza as you're doing before you divide it up, that's what the settlements are. They're just taking the land and they're like, okay, well, sorry, we can't give it back now because we got all these people living here. That would be a genocide. To make all the illegal settlers leave the West Bank, that would be a genocide. Well, kind of it would be. Just like establishing a Jewish state in Palestine in 1948. Same thing. Yeah, it's settler colonialism. These people, you took these people's land, you forced them off the land, killed a bunch of them to do that. Won't let them back. I don't get it. Like, and again, I often think about the American Revolution. I think about the anti-colonial independent struggle of the Americans, in the 1770s and 80s. Like, I think it does. I think actually a lot of Americans do vibe with the Palestinian cause for that reason, because there are some major similarities. I mean, historically, as a country, we should, if there is such a thing as like a historical national consciousness, we should be predisposed to identify with the Palestinians, not Israel. Israel's a European colony. My God, they're all from Russia. I mean, the original settlers were all from Russia. The Israeli settlers, all from Europe, and some from the United States. Later, the Mizrahi Jews from the Middle East did move into Israel, and I think now they're a majority. But it was founded by Ashkenazi Jews, my people from Europe. Like, they're not Middle Eastern, they're European. Okay.
I thought it was important to note on a domestic issue that the first time that every serious Republican contender, have been under the same roof addressing constituents was last week at the Republican Jewish Coalition. They had their annual leadership summit in Las Vegas, Nevada. And it was the one time, like, Donald Trump thought that the public debates on TV were beneath him, but somehow thought that this was the most
Quick
important thing to
question.
attend.
Quick question. I don't know this. Do you happen to know this? Do you know if this is Sheldon Adelson's outfit? Because when you say Republican, Jewish, and Las Vegas, Sheldon Adelson is the guy. So I don't know. He's dead now, but he was Trump's big supporter. And a big, oh, by the way, one of the major funders of the state of Israel, Sheldon Adelson, single-handedly. Do you know if it's his thing? Probably was.
I don't know if there's any direct ties, but I see.
He's considered one of the most evil people in politics, like by dissident left and right people.
He's a leading funder of the RJC's political arm. There's the connection.
Yep. I don't really care about him, but he's just, people should know that's what we're talking about. One of the major, and one of the reasons that Trump, although I think Jared Kushner is another reason. By the way, everyone should watch Jared Kushner's interviews on this stuff. The guy is retarded. I thought he was actually going to be intelligent. Did you know that he was that stupid? I didn't know Jared Kushner was that stupid. He had a good reputation as like a thinker, but he's a lightweight little school.
Which interview are you referring to?
I've seen a couple. But what was the big one he gave on Israel recently?
He did Lex Friedman. He did 4 hours of Lex Friedman.
Yeah, and there was like people were raving about that.
Yeah.
He's a schoolboy. He doesn't know shit. He's an idiot. No, please, guys, that's embarrassing that people recommended that. You can be pro-Israel. That's fine. There are very, very smart pro-Israel people. He's not it.
But he says everything so calmly, and the details wash over my head, and it's so boring that I just assume he's smart.
People know I'm open to people being. I love a lot of MAGA people. I love like a lot of MAGA. I think they're brilliant and correct about a lot of shit. Not him. Not him. And this is, to me, one of the biggest problems with Trump is that he was just like stupidly pro-Israel. And I just don't think I guess it's from being in New York. I guess it's from dealing with a lot of Jewish big shot financiers, the Klutznick group types that Kissinger was lecturing. I'm sure Trump had good relations with them, because you have to have good relations with them if you're going to do New York real estate. You're going to have relationships with a lot of rich Jews, and rich Jews in New York tend not to be pro-Palestinian. Rich Jews in New York tend to be very pro-Israel. So there's that. And then Jared comes along, and we know that Jared and Ivanka actually changed Trump's opinions on policy, sometimes from my point of view for the better, like when Ivanka convinced him to be pro-DACA and let the little immigrant kids in. That was Ivanka. And Jared was running Israel policy, and that's why they did the Abraham Accords, and we should talk about that, I guess, because that's important. People trot that out. That's one of the main reasons this Gaza war is happening.
You think so? You think the 2020 Abraham Accords?
Oh yeah,
motivated
almost everybody on both sides is saying it was part of it, because well, there's dumb people on the pro-Israel side who say that it's not anyway, but most people on both sides say it's because the story is that Jared, and I think it was basically Jared, at least initiated this, and this is why he became an expert, so to speak, on Israel. And because, he's friends with Bibi Netanyahu, his family is friends with Netanyahu. So Jared is like a child of Israel. He's just unfortunately not terribly bright. But anyway, so he just brokered a set of deals. There were between Israel and a bunch of Arab states like Saudi and Bahrain and Morocco, in which each one was sort of its own deal, but they were all about like trading, they were like trade deals. And then sort of, they weren't even peace pacts. They were just trade, which is all fine. No problem with that. But there was no mention at all of the Palestinian issue, which is from the people who live in Arab countries' point of view, is like the issue. By the way, across, as far as I understand, across the Muslim and Arab worlds, everyone cares about Palestine. Like it is like the universal issue among Arabs and Muslims, regardless of what state you live in. So a lot of these Arab leaders in these countries are going against the wishes of the people who live there. But yeah, they just completely cut out the Palestinians. Say, no, we're not going to deal with Gaza. No, they live in an open air prison, but it's not going to be part of this. Jared had no interest in helping the Palestinians whatsoever. And neither did the king of and neither did MBS and Saudi Arabia or all these other fucking Arab leaders who, yeah, are gross and disgusting and don't let Palestinian refugees in and close the gates from Gaza and all the thing. It's all true. A lot of the right wing says this stuff. It's like, yeah, we know that Palestinians have been mistreated by the Arabs, by the Arab governments repeatedly. Ask a Palestinian, they'll be the first to tell you. Hamas hates those people. Yeah, and so what happened was, then Netanyahu gives a speech at the United Nations, which everyone should check out. When was that? I think it was earlier this year. It's just a few months ago. He gave a big speech at the UN, I think to the General Assembly, and he holds up a map of the Middle East. And on the map, there is no West Bank, there is no Gaza. All of it is Israel. And he says, this is the new Middle East. And people have said who follow this issue that, and I noticed it too, like since about 2 years ago, but certainly I would say since 2014, since the last big war. There was another one in 2018, 2019. Since 2014, but certainly since 2019, Palestine has dropped off the map. Like we don't talk about it. You and I haven't I don't think we've mentioned Israel once, have we? In a year and a half, whatever it's been.
No.
Right? No one has. No one talks about Gaza. No, we did. We talked about Gaza a lot in the 2010s because there was just every 2 years they were bombing the shit out of it. But now in the last few years, no, there's nothing. And so the story is, and I think this is right, I mean, it makes sense. There was a feeling of desperation that, okay, we're going to be trapped in this concentration camp forever. No one cares. Like our Arab friends are not going to help us. The United States is not going to help us, because the United States used to actually push for a two-state solution. And the United States officially is for a two-state solution, but they used to actually do stuff for the Palestinians here and there, like real things that were real help. Not now. Kushner and Trump come in and they're like, nah, fuck you. We're going to do our own thing. We're going to get rich with some new deals between the Saudis and the Israelis. And that's that, and that's Middle East peace. And that's our big contribution to world peace. Trump said, no, it was bullshit. I mean, it's good in a sense. The trade deals are always good, I think, generally, unless they're weapons deals. But no, they just didn't address the Palestinians. And they just basically said in doing so, we're done with you. You're there. You're stuck. And again, if I were born there, and remember, half the people in there were born since the blockade, so they've never left. How on earth? And by the way, every member of the Qassam brigades who did the action on October 7th, every single member basically, has had direct family members killed in Israeli bombardments. Please, everybody, think about it. You're in a concentration camp. Your family has been killed by Israel, dropping bombs on your homes. You going to be nice? You going to be nice? Like Nat Turner, the slave rebel who led the rebellion of slaves in Virginia, which was the biggest slave rebellion in American history. And by far the most violent. They beheaded people. They escaped a plantation and they roamed around the country in Virginia, killed any white person they found. They didn't care if they were slave owners or not. If they were white, they killed them. They cut their heads off. They hung them from trees. I think they raped some women, disemboweled some people, dismembered them. I mean, worse shit than Hamas did, than Qassam brigades did on October 7th. These were all slaves on a plantation who did this. How does history judge the Nat Turner Rebellion? Do we say, Michael Weimer, do you condemn the Nat Turner Rebellion for what they did to those white people? Do you know they beheaded babies? And by the way, they actually did behead babies.
I mean,
do you condemn them?
Yes.
But think about it, people. Like, no, of course, no one wants that to happen. This is why I'm opposed to supporting Israel, because Israel makes things like this happen. That's the point. The project of Zionism makes this happen. A lot of what the IDF does is not because they're evil or racist. It's because they have to maintain the state of Israel, which is, as I said, inherently exclusionary and racist and dispossessive. That's why they're doing this. It's the logic of Zionism. Don't get hung up on Israelis being evil people, although I think it forces them often to basically think in ways that I think people would see as evil, like, justifying killing 5,000 children, for instance. It's still like mind-boggling. Like 5,000 children. Imagine if Putin did that. Imagine if Putin did that. So imagine if Putin had, like, if there was some village, some encircled city in Ukraine that was full of children for some reason, and he just shelled it night and day for a month and killed 5,000 kids, Ukrainian kids. And we had videos from inside showing the bombings and the kids and the dead and what? We'd probably nuke Russia. I mean, there would certainly be calls to nuke Russia. And you wonder why there are calls to nuke Israel? What other reason would you have?
Real quick, I'm just going to say I am cleaning up the chat at Rumble. We do not tolerate anti-Semitism here. Take that somewhere else.
Do we get some? Was there anti-Semitism?
Yeah.
What did they say about Jews? But is it true?
Oh, well, it was just a link to one of those sites where they list how everybody in every industry is Jewish.
Well, it's true. This is how stupid the right wing is on this stuff. The anti-Semitic right wing. That I saw that one. It's a picture of headshots of all these media figures, and they're all Jewish. Like, one of them was Max Blumenthal, one of them was Glenn Greenwald, and one of them I think was Michael Tracy. I'm like, yeah, they're Jewish, but they have nothing to do with the rest of these people.
This one has Janet Yellen, Merrick Garland, Anthony Blinken, Victoria Nuland.
All true.
David Cohen.
Right. But the main point about those people is not that they're Jewish. They are Zionists. Whereas, as I said, Max Blumenthal, Glenn Greenwald, all these Jewish people are anti-Zionist.
Yeah. The Jew thing is a distraction. It's the state of Israel.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all it is. So, it ain't got nothing to do with me and the Jewish people. I mean, it has something to do with us. They claim to be part of us or represent us, but no.
They're always the first ones to invoke the Holocaust. You can't let them use that as a bullying tactic.
By the way, I'm for the first time in my life. Well, no, that's not true. For the first time in a long time, I'm like identifying as Jewish just for this purpose. I mean, but I was thinking, like, I'm a quarter Jewish. My mother's Jewish, so I get a little bit more weight there. But then I'm thinking, like, all these black people who are like 1/64th black, calling themselves black proudly, and they identify as black their entire lives, and everybody thinks of them as black. All these people with skin like about as light as mine. I can be, if I'm a quarter, imagine if I were a quarter black, like I'd be black as fuck in America. So I'm Jewish.
You gotta have the Sean King grooming pattern going for you.
Don't I? Right. Yeah. I know. Yeah, no. Sean and I are related. So that was fun doing the grifties with the Hoteps on Sean. I presented Sean King with the Grifter of the Year award at the Hoteps annual award show.
And then anyway, next year they gave W.E.B. Du Bois a Lifetime Achievement Award.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Finally, they're balancing it out. Do you have the page for the course?
We're doing this again, right?
We're updating the course on Israel and Palestine for a bunch of reasons. A lot of people asked me for it because they wanted to get updates, but also I'm going to add a lot of new stuff to this course. It's going to be way bigger and better than the first one. Yeah. First one was amazing. Got a lot of demand to do a second, so I'm updating it. Israel and Palestine, origins of the Gaza war. That's going to be Monday, November 13th, so that's a week from Monday. Live course. You can show up, hang out. You can be completely anonymous and just watch, or you can participate. Then there will be a streaming video after that. So if you sign up for the course, you can watch it live. You can participate live, be in the class. And you can watch the streaming video anytime. So go to unregisteredacademy.com. the URL. Can you put that up?
Oh yeah. Unregistered Academy.
Unregisteredacademy.com. Just go there. You're fine. It's on the front page.
Yeah.
But unregisteredacademy.com. And yeah, it was a great, I mean, this course was incredible and really, really useful for a lot of people. And it's going to be bigger and better this time. And also we're going to update it with a lot of the new information that's come out. So,
oh, I was going to say we were talking about Wolf Blitzer. He did a debate in 1989 with Norman Finkelstein.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the meantime, watch everything that Max Blumenthal is doing. If you ever get a chance to listen to Max talk about Israel, do that. I don't care if you agree with him or not. That guy knows just everything. Like he might be the number one expert on Israel Palestine that I've heard. He is incredible. And he's lived there. He's lived in Gaza. He's lived in Tel Aviv. He's lived in the West Bank multiple times. And he's written multiple huge books. Goliath is one of the most important books on this subject. If you want to know, especially sort of the more recent history, the last 20 years or so, go check out Max. But he knows the entire thing, up, down, backwards. Then I would say Norman Finkelstein, as I've mentioned many times. But Max is younger and sharper and has a little more of the current information. But both those guys are amazing. Both 100% Jewish. Both descended from Holocaust survivors. Both of his parents were in the camps. So these guys have all the cred in the world. And then these Israeli Jewish anti-Zionists are incredible. Miko Lebed is one. And then these Ilan Pappe, Pappe, tremendous Israeli Jewish historian, anti-Zionist. Check him out. All doing a lot of interviews these days. Yeah, you're good with those. If you watch those, you can just go to YouTube. They've all done a bunch of stuff recently. Strongly recommend those guys. That's who I'm watching the most. The Duran is always good, especially on the geopolitical angle. Oh, we didn't even talk about that. I mean, we again just so many tripwires for World War III. I can't even. It basically encircling the region, all around the region. There's stuff happening that could lead to a global conflict. I mean, aircraft carriers in the Mediterranean. There's fighting. Tomorrow. Everyone needs to pay attention. Tomorrow, Hezbollah is announcing something. There's a huge announcement in Beirut, I guess, or Lebanon by Hezbollah, the Hezbollah leader. And most people are assuming he's going to announce that they are entering the war. A second front in the north, probably is going to happen tomorrow, start tomorrow with Hezbollah. And Hezbollah is not like Hamas. They're a serious army and they get real serious equipment and assistance from Iran. They are feared and major and big. They have big weapons, big rockets, and a lot of new weaponry now. They're also connected, of course, to Iran, and Iran is connected to Russia. They're all allied, and they're all connected to Syria. They're allied with Syria. And there is massive demand in all these countries, all the Arab countries, for those governments to come to the aid of the Palestinians who are being slaughtered in Gaza, meaning they're calling for their governments to go to war with Israel. Yeah, that's where we are. This is why we should care. I don't care if you care about dead brown kids. This is another quick gateway to World War III for us, for the United States of America. We've got 14,000 soldiers on the ground right there now, either in the Mediterranean on ships or on the ground in Syria and Iraq. Any one of those gets hurt, we're in it. We are in it. If any one of those gets hurt, we are in it. So, all right, with that, go to unregisteredacademy.com. And Unregistered Live, which is right after this, is for all the patrons of us. Go to patreon.com/unregistered, become a patron at any level, and you can join us. Click the URL in the comments on Patreon, or it's a post on Patreon, and join us. It's a Zoom meeting with Michael and me. We hang out after Unreported every week. So that's where we're going right now. Michael, thank you so much for listening to me. I'm sorry I dragged you through all the dead kid talk, but appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Hopefully next week I doubt it, but maybe we'll have things to talk about. Everyone, there's going to be protests and rallies in all the major cities on Saturday. I'm going to one in San Francisco. It's a big one. DC is going to be huge. I recommend it. It's not all crazies. It's run by the Jewish Voice for Peace. Nice liberals, so anyway.
I would never encourage somebody to go on a domestic rampage for no reason at all. But I'm just saying, if that were to happen, it would be a nice change of pace in the news cycle.
You want a mass shooting?
I'm just saying, I would never encourage anybody to do that.
That's fabulous.
I'm just saying, it would.
That's
be
fabulous.
Nice...
Just in case people weren't offended by what I had to say about Israel Palestine, we just want to leave everyone with that little nugget. All right, cool. Well, hope you're wrong. All right, see you soon.
See ya.